Welcome to Jacob's Ladder, Genesis 28:12-15. It points the way out. Prepared by Father and Son team, George and Dana Brown. Salvation, the upper world, is Jesus' dominion. God's right represents heaven on earth, whereas damnation, the nether world, is down the hole, the pit. That's Satan's dominion, God's left, the growing hell on earth. The lineage of the inheritance. The names of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Israel, and Joseph are upon Manasseh and Ephraim, Joseph's two sons. Genesis 48:15 and 16. Also see days 3 and 4 of the chronology of humanity. The Godhead, viewed from the back. God's left, the north. God's right, the south. God Almighty is the head, reigns supreme. And Satan is the left, and Jesus is at God's right. Salvation involves moving from God's left to God's right. Come out of her, my people. Deliver thyself. Remember that now. Revelation 18:4. And Jeremiah 51:6. Zechariah 2:6 and 7. Don't delay. Flee from under God's left. People have 4 opportunities. The regeneration encompasses 1650 years from the turning point unto the completion of the regeneration. So here we have the logo here. We have 7-day week plus an 8th day, and 3 days and a half from the 5 BC birth of Jesus Christ. And a little piece tacked on the end, another 150 years. Okay, so we have the earth created with attributes of age at 0, or 4005 BC. At this point, all humanity will have been accepted unto the eternal kingdom. This is the end of the great regeneration. So from 0, 6,000 years is the turning point in the spring of 1996, the beginning of 6001. And we have 1650 years unto the end of the great regeneration. So Earth was created with attributes of age, back at 0, 4000, 4001. It's the 5 BC birth of Jesus Christ in the spring. And we have 2 Samuel 14:14, and Jonah 4:5 and 11, and Matthew 25, verse 46 to consider. And God makes a way for even his banished to enter the kingdom. Now, a millennial day is 1,000 years. So 1,000 years divided into 24 hours is shown here. So 1 hour is 42 years. So the Firstfruits 42-year hour, 124 times 1,000-year day equals 41.67, rounded to 42, or 6 times 7 years. The Firstfruits 42-year hour is a template for 3 subsequent hours. Now, Job chides Ecclesia. Job's question: why, seeing times are not hidden from the Almighty, do they that know him not see his days? Job 24:1. It's all laid out quite simply. All people have to do is look. Even the tares will know. To answer Job's question, Job 24:1, no one knows which of the 4 castes they are in until they actually enter the eternal kingdom. The tares are accepted as the window for entering sainthood closes forever after the latter harvest. Daniel 12, 6 and 7. It's the end of these wonders. Now the tares are then destined to enter the eternal kingdom as servants forever and ever. Their lake of fire. Again, 2 Samuel 14:14, Jonah 4, 5, and 11. And Jonah saw Nineveh being saved, and he got all excited and all shook up. And Matthew 25:46. So the 42-year hour is 6 sevens, 124 times a 1,000-year day. So there's 4 different hours. You can see them in Revelation 18:10, Firstfruits. 17 would be the main harvest. 19, the latter harvest. And 21 to 24 with tares. So we have the firstfruits, saints, kings, queens, and priests. 2 is the main harvest. There's saints also that step down, they're princes. And 3 is the latter harvest. They're also saints, but they're lesser princes. They're the lowest of the saints. They're still way above the tares, which is item 4, the servants of the saints, the workers, eternal slaves for eternity. Okay, positioning the 42-year hour. 1, the chronology provides a skeletal structure of history and prophecy. 2, time bridges position the firstfruits 42-year hour. 3 is God's 7 annual holy periods lay out a schedule of events during the hour, of course. And 4 is the beginning of sorrows, previews of great tribulations. They reinforce previous material. And 5, 2 different 70-year periods stress a specific 30 years. Okay, the chronology provides a skeletal structure of history and prophecy. The chronology of humanity provides a skeletal structure encompassing all history and prophecy. So from 0 to 6,000, then we hit the turning point in the spring of 1996 AD, completion of 6,000 years. And we have 1650 more years until the completion of the Great Regeneration. So it's a 7-day week plus an 8th day. The earth was created back in 0 with attributes of age. And the 5 BC birth of Jesus Christ. And the Lord's Day is day 3 and day 7. So we have 3 days and a half, or times and a half time, until the end of these wonders, when the latter harvest is brought into the kingdom. And then later on we have 150 years later, the tares enter the kingdom. And it's 1,000-year days. Time bridges. Time bridges position the firstfruits 42-year hour. Explaining time bridges. 2300, Daniel 8:14. Cleansing the sanctuary. And 26:25, Daniel 12:11 and 12, speaks of 1,290 years plus 1,335 years. Now, Isaiah 14:28 speaks of the burden that was placed upon man in Ahaz's death, 3385 from creation. And 2 Kings 16:20. Okay, now we have 2,000 years, or 2 days, Hosea 6:1 and 2. And God will heal his firstfruits, Exodus 19:11 to 19. Then we also have 6,000 years, 6 days, 6 water pots, John 2:1 to 10. That's when Jesus turned the water to wine in 6,000 years. Okay, 6,000 years equals 120 Jubilees. Genesis 6:3. Then we have the third and seventh days, Exodus 19:11 to 19, and 2 Kings 20, verse 5. Healing, it comes on the third day, Exodus 20, verses 8 and 11. And that's the fourth commandment, keep the seventh day holy, or else. And Genesis 2, 1 to 3, where God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. 20 years is 360, one complete cycle times 7. And it's Daniel 4, 16, 23, 25, and 32. It's given 4 different times representing the 4 different hours. The dial moved 10 years, and Isaiah 14:28 says that the burden was placed upon humanity in the year Ahaz died. 38:8 speaks of moving the dial, 10 years there. And 2 Kings 20:8 to 11. Okay, 1,000 years is presented in Revelation 20, verses 2 to 7. And 3.5 millennia, that's a time times and a half time. Daniel 7:25 and 12:6 and 7 speaks of the end of these wonders. And Revelation 12:14 also speaks of the times and a half time. And Revelation 11:11 and 12 speaks of 3.5 millennia. For additional information on time bridges, see video H1 of the chronology of humanity, day 7. Locking events in place. Time bridges establish key points of the special 42-year hour, Firstfruits 42-year hour. Therefore, the basic chronology must be accurate, otherwise the time bridges do not fit. Again, time bridges position the initial 42-year hour. Time bridges. The human shepherd anointed in the spring of 1978 AD. That's 5982 from creation. Now on the far right we have the glorious solemn assembly begins in the spring of 2017 AD. That's the year 6022 from creation. Now, starting on the left, we have the spring of 1978, of course, and then we have 4 years until the spring of 1982, when the Firstfruits 42-year hour begins. We have 14 preparation years until the year 6001 begins. That's the Lord's Day. Began in the spring of 1996 AD. At that point, Revelation 8:1, the half hour, 21-year pause began until the glorious solemn assembly begins in the spring of 2017 AD. Now down below we have the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Each of these represent a time bridge which locked the 42-year hour in place. A began with Alexander's death, and 2,300 years later we have the human shepherd anointed. Alexander died in 3682 from creation. 4 years later, his generals divide up the kingdom, and that is 319 BC, and the other is 323 BC. So we have the 2,300 years fits in here. Rather interesting. Now C and D. D is 6010 from creation. Now it doesn't make too much sense to the beginner. We're talking now about Daniel 12, 11 and 12 speak of 1,290 years plus 1335 years, which is 2625 years. And the day that Ahaz died was 3385 from creation. So it doesn't make much sense at this point to examine it and see that it comes out to this point 6010. However, in moving the dial back 10 degrees or 10 years, we come to C, the year 6000 from creation, which makes a great deal of sense until later on when we move the dial back in the opposite direction. We're talking now about Isaiah 38 verses 5 and 8. So we move the dial back and forth here for this time bridge. Now E is 2,000 years, 2 days, and F is 6,000 years, or 6 days from creation. Now, E is from the 5 BC birth of Jesus. Both fit very neatly right here at this point. And G is the 3rd day, and the 7th day began. Now H, we have Daniel 4. Daniel 4 speaks of 4 times 360, the complete cycle, times 7. So 360 times 7 is 20 years. H now represents 3502, is year 1. And that's when Nebuchadnezzar was made king. So from when Nebuchadnezzar was made king, you count from 3501, 20 years brings us to 6021, the completion of 6021 from creation. God's 7 annual holy periods lay out a schedule of events. God's 7 annual holy periods, again, lay out a key schedule within the Firstfruits 42-year hour. Leviticus 23, 1 to 44. Also, Jesus' 7 reappearances occurred as follows: 4 times on one unleavened bread, twice to women outside the tomb. The first time he said, "Don't touch me, I have to appear before our Father." And the second time he had completed his appearance before God Almighty and returned. So that's just 2 times he appeared to the women, the very first events. All right, then once en route to Emmaus, to disciples, and once to apostles and disciples in Herod's temple, observing 1 UB. Jesus' 5th reappearance was on 7 unleavened bread, to disciples, observing 7 unleavened bread in the temple. The apostles were in Galilee. The women were told to tell his apostles that Jesus would meet them in Galilee. So the apostles took off and they went around in Jerusalem for his 5th reappearance. They were 100 miles north in Galilee. All right, now Jesus' 6th reappearance was on one Pentecost, the day after 7 unleavened bread. One Pentecost, the apostles were fishing in Tiberias, Galilee. They were not supposed to be fishing, but they were fishing there, and they hadn't caught anything all night. And Jesus reappeared. They weren't sure who he was, but he told them, "Well, cast your net out on the right side of the boat." They said, "Well, we didn't catch any fish all night long." So they went ahead and cast out on the right side of the boat, and lo and behold, 153 fish were caught in the net. And they hauled the net in, and it didn't break. So note that this is the 3rd holy day wherein Jesus reappeared. John 21:14. The 153 fish is a very important number. So Jesus' 7th reappearance was on 50 Pentecost to apostles on a mount in Galilee. So these are the 7 reappearances. First and third months, annual holy periods. We have 1, 2, and 3 here. We start the first month at the new moon at 1, separation of the lambs at 10, Passover the 14th day, that's the first holy day of the annual holy periods. New moon is a holy day, it's a fast day. The separation of the lambs is not a holy day, but it's a very important day that's mentioned. So the 15th to the 21st is the week of unleavened bread. So that's how it fits together. And Pentecost, we have one Pentecost begins after the Sabbath of unleavened bread, the 7 days of unleavened bread. That's on the 22nd day of the first month. And the 50th day of Pentecost falls on about 12 Sivan, the third month. So down below here now we have 1982, the spring, the 42-year hour began. And then we have the 120th Jubilee year. Liberty was proclaimed. Leviticus 25, 8 to 11, and Genesis 6, 3. Now Isaiah 37, 3 says liberty's been proclaimed and so forth, but no one's come to the birth. What's going on here? And 32, verse 10, and 49, 9, releasing the prisoners, speaks of that. 61, 1 also, and 14, verse 17 says that Satan refused to release his prisoners. The 7th month, the annual holy periods, we have 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, 4 is the trumpets. The 7th new moon heralds the Lord's Day, 1996 AD, spring. Atonement on the 10th year. That answers what point D is. Atonement year, 2005, 2006, spring to spring. And then we're missing the 14th year here, but we have the Week of Tabernacles. The 6th annual holy period is the Week of Tabernacles, where people are supposed to live in booths, temporary shelters, for the week. They celebrate the 15th, but not the 21st. And the 7th holy period is the Solemn Assembly on the 22nd year, 2017 to 2018, spring to spring. Now, note that we have moved the dial 10 years, from 6010 back to 6000, the end of 6000, the beginning of 6001, from creation. It's shown in the bottom center here. Now, the beginning of sorrows reinforces previous material and previews millennial tribulations to come. Now, the beginning of sorrows is a 35-year preliminary experience. It previews millennial tribulations. It provides a progressive growth of troubles, clearly described in Revelation 6:1 through 16:21, Leviticus 26:14 to 34, and Ezekiel 14:12 to 21, and so forth. Revelation speaks of these cumulative tribulations as 1, the 7 seals, 14 years begin there, and 2, the 7 trumpets, 7 years, and 3, the 7 thunders, begin in another 7 years, and 4, the 7 plagues. The beginning of sorrows, Leviticus 26:14 to 33, and Revelation 6:1 through 16:21. They begin with the Firstfruits 42-year hour, the first 35 years. So the first 14 years is preparation years, and end when 6001 begins, the Lord's Day began at that point in the spring of 1996 AD. In Revelation 8:1, a half-hour pause, 21 years right there until the glorious solemn assembly again. Now we see down below here, we see the opening of the seven seals. They all extend to the end of 35 years. So we have a 5-year Salah there, a 5-year break, and then the tribulations resume for the disobedient. 5 years is to celebrate the glorious solemn assembly. Now keep your eye on the seventh seal. The seventh seal is very important because the seventh seal begins the sounding of the seven trumpets. And the seven trumpets sound there, and they extend all the way to the end of the 35-year period. Now keep your eye on the seventh trumpet, because the voices of the seven thunders begin at that point. And then the seventh thunder is the seven plagues, the pouring out of the seven plagues. That begins in the spring of 2010 from creation. Now, two different 70-year periods. They stress a specific 30 years. So what is this 30 years? Now, two different 70-year periods define a special 30-year interval. Two different 70-year periods are defined, wherein events occur after the first 70 years end, but before the second 70-year interval ends. This defines a unique 30-year period of special tribulations and events. After Daniel's 62nd year, salvation is shut off for potential firstfruits. People must now wait 1,000 years for the main harvest. Revelation 20:4-6, and Daniel 9:2 and 26. Okay, after Jeremiah's 70 years on the left side, but during Daniel's 70 years. So we have the seven seals, the seven trumpets, the seven thunders, the seven plagues, and the glorious solemn assembly. So the turning point in 1996. Now we have Daniel's 62nd year ends in the spring of 2010, when salvation closes and the plagues begin. Now down below, way down the lower left, we have Jeremiah and Isaiah's 70 years. Jeremiah 25:11-38, and Jeremiah 29:10-14 speaks of the gathering of the saints. And Isaiah 23:15-18 speaks of events again. Okay, now Daniel's 70 years begin in 1948, whereas Jeremiah's 70 years began in the spring of 1918 through the spring of 1988. Now, Daniel's 70 years, 1948 to the end of Daniel's 70 years in the spring of 2018, the end of the glorious solemn assembly. So we have Daniel 9:2 and 24-27. It describes this 30-year period, a very unique 30 years in the history of humanity, history and prophecy. Zechariah 1, verses 12-17. The coming division of the world. We have life in hell. Down below, the sea of glass separates, of course, the netherworld, described as a pit. Cast them down, disobedience, into the nether parts of the earth, with them that go down into the pit. Ezekiel 32:18 and verse 24, and Ezekiel 31, verse 14. Whereas salvation is the upper world, the ladder is the way out. Flies, peak, cleaving to government corruption. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. And the Lord did so. And there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies. People, flies swarm to the garbage heap. So that's Exodus 8:23 to 24. Broken kingdom that was inherited by Barack Obama is the evil kingdom. Broken, it's bent, it's evil, it's corrupted, and the flies are swarming to the garbage heap. The gathering of the firstfruits is underway. The separation by the sea of glass separates. This invisible separation. Life in hell below, the netherworld below, and salvation the upper world. I, Jesus, am from above, whereas ye, the disobedient, are from beneath. John 8, verse 23. Now all of that divides. There's an amount that divides, splits in half. The upper world, the saints, enjoy eternal life, health, and so forth. In the sea of glass, an invisible division, class separation. That's all it is class separation. It's very important, though. In the netherworld, sinners waiting to get out, but none can depart until the 8th day, when salvation closes for the firstfruits. Zephaniah 3:14 to 20, and verse 18 says the gathering is for the solemn assembly, and they're ready to whoop it up here. And Isaiah 4, verse 2 to 6 speaks of the gathering again. And Revelation 15, 2 to 4 speaks of the sea of glass, the separation between everybody. In Revelation 5:10, they're like kings and priests unto God, and they're right here on earth. And Luke 16:26 again wraps it up. The chronology of humanity. Humanity's double portion arrived on day 6. Everybody can see that today. They look back, the automobiles, the steam engines, the railroads, and ships, and so forth, all came at the end of the 6th day. So we have all electricity, understanding electricity. Then we have nuclear power. And note that during the end of day 6, wisdom, man's understanding of things went straight up. Ended with the turning point in the spring of 1996, when the personal computers came to being. The turning point in the spring of 1996 marked the beginning of the 7th millennium from creation, and it also marked the beginning of the 3rd day from the 5 BC birth of Jesus Christ. So on the left, at 0 over here, we have planet Earth created with attributes of age. Then at the end of the 4th day, we have the 5 BC birth of Jesus Christ. And then we have into the 2nd day. In preparation, humanity went from the horse and buggy into space at the end of the 2nd day, or the end of the 6th day, the double portion on the 6th day. Then we have the 3rd and 7th day. So we have 3.5 days, times and a half time. So these are 1,000-year days. Biblical prophecy came true before the eyes of the world. Quote, and it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Exodus 16:5. And that's exactly what happened at the end of the 6th day, the end of 6,000 years. Tithing to firstfruits provides protection from the devourer. Malachi 3:8 to 12. It's a rather important point. 4 levels form the eternal kingdom over 1650 years. 4 groups enter the eternal kingdom, 3 levels of saints and a 4th level as servants, from the greatest unto the least. Matthew 5:17-19. Come out of her, my people. Deliver thyself. It's a very important point. The individual is responsible for his own behavior. Revelations 18:4, Jeremiah 51:6, Zechariah 2:6 and 7. Repeat that again. Come out of her, my people. Deliver thyself. Don't delay. Flee from under God's left. People have 4 opportunities to get out. So the first is about to end. The chronology of humanity. From 0, we have 6,000 years of history. And then we start in with prophecy. The 7th day and the 8th day. 2nd and 3rd day from 5 BC, birth of Christ. So we have 3.5 days. The Firstfruits 42-year hour is the first 42-year hour shown here. Then we have the main harvest 1,000 years later. We have 6 sevens there, 42 years. And then 500 years after that we have the 3rd one, which is 6 sevens also, the latter harvest. They're the 3 levels of saints. And a 4th level, the tares. So we have 1,000-year days, and we have 1/24 of a 1,000-year day. Push your pause button if you want to jot the references down. So the Firstfruits, the first group to be saved. The main harvest of the 2nd group to be saved 1,000 years later. And 500 years after that, there's the 3rd group to be saved, the latter harvests. And these are the 3 groups that are saved from the standpoint of the grace of God comes to everyone, but only 3 groups are brought into the kingdom, the eternal kingdom, as saints. Whereas the 4th group, the tares, are the 4th group to be saved as servants. They're lake of fire.